can't see you because the lights are too bright, but I hope that you can see me. But today is a heart-to-heart, and I hope that I see you with the lens of my heart, and I hope that you see me that way as well. I have a little exercise to do, so I want you to take your right hand and place it on your heart. I'm mic'd up, so I have to put my hand right here, and I want you to create this sound with me. Ready? Let's do it. Nice and loud. Keep going. Now, while you keep doing that, I'm going to introduce you to the heart that has really kind of stolen the world, the heart that everyone knows around the world. Now, keep going. For the next 10 seconds, a heartbeat for the city of Detroit. Thank you. Go Detroit. Comeback kid. I'm an unscripted person. I could not for the life of me figure out how to put a script together for this TEDx. So it really is a heart-to-heart. I want to speak to you about 4 very powerful stories. Hopefully we'll get to all 4. And then I want to leave you with some wisdoms that life has taught me. The first story begins with a gentleman in an ICU. I'm a critical care nurse. I was working at Sinai Hospital. 50-year-old man came in for open heart surgery. Many of you know what that is. About 3 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden, I hear beep, 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 beep. I look, and this man's heart begins to go this. Well, you know what that means. That's a straight line, and that is an absolute emergency. So I quickly jumped, code blue, and I began to pump on the chest of this man for CPR. Dr. Gary Goodman, one of the finest surgeons I've ever met, ran into the room, and he says to me, Najah, we got to split the chest. We got to split the chest. I'm thinking we're running to the operating room to split the chest. Before I know it, Dr. Gary Goodman has a scalpel in his hand, and he splits the chest. And then he uses wire cutters to cut these wires that hold the ribs together. And then he used retractors. Before I knew it, there was this human heart. And this man looking right at me, and me looking right at him. Quickly, Dr. Gary Goodman was working to save this man's life, grabbed a suction. The heart was drowning in something that we called cardiac tamponade. And then he looked at me with so much intensity, and he said, Najah, pump the heart, pump the heart. I'm thinking, what? He grabbed my hand, and he put my hand on this human heart, and I began to clap the heart. Then the heart started to quiver. And then the heart started to do this. This was a pivotal moment in my life. I have never been the same person since this happened. It's what I call a spiritual synapse. We all have them, but sometimes we're not really aware of the moment in time and how to capture that moment in time. For me, this was, again, a place that I can never be the same person after this incident. As I went home, I started thinking about this, and I'm like, oh my God, I just held a man's heart in my hand, but he's a father and a son, and so on and so forth. What that lesson taught me is that if we were to unzip ourselves and turn ourselves inside out, we would all be the same. And maybe, if once in a while we looked through that lens of our heart, just maybe we would be kinder, and there would be less war and less destruction. But when we zip ourselves back up, we are different, and we need to honor the difference, but remember that we are also the same. Few quick stories. You wouldn't believe it. I found a baby dying in a laundry basket on clean white towels. I was so taken aback. The parents had so much dignity. They had so much resilience. They did the best that they could do. They actually created a crib for their baby. I thought to myself, not on my watch, we can do something about poverty. And so we did. Myself, my children, a U-Haul, 15 years out of the back of my van, doing poverty alleviation. The second story, would you believe that I end up in a pathology lab and I find this shelf full of jars and jugs and tubs, brown with green labels on them. And a nurse who took me there started crying and crying, and I knew she wanted me to know what was in them. So I opened it up, put my hand in it, and I pulled out a fetus that had been dead for 5 to 7 years, not just one, many, many fetuses. Not on my watch. If you see an injustice, you fix it with your hands, and if you can't fix it with your hands, you should really try your very, very best to condemn it in your heart. And that is the weakest of faith. So we started an infant burial program. The third story has to deal with a gentleman that I was taking care of in a hospital. Since I do end-of-life work, this gentleman was dying by himself. He had nobody. He'd lost his entire family by a bomb blast that hit his house in Iraq. And so here he was, based on the United Nations Resettlement Program, here in Detroit. And so I would visit him every single day. And I would say to him, how? Teach me how you find endurance. And he said, for himself, he says, whenever I knock on the door of my saint, she gives me the patience that I need, that maybe one day I'll see my family again. These are the kinds of stories that I have had to deal with and had to understand. What do these stories mean and how do they change our life? I want to leave you with 4 wisdoms. But before I do that, I do want to tell you that those stories culminated in an organization that we call Zaman International. The 4 wisdoms that I want to leave you with, and especially the young people here in the audience today, is time. Zaman means time, and it's about how we spend our time in the stewardship of others. Time is something we all chase. We will never catch it. So always do good, always be good, and prioritize your belief system, whatever it may be, and keep your priorities right here. And don't deviate from those priorities. They take you a long way. The second wisdom that these stories have taught me is the story of hope. Hope is intrinsic. It exists in the heart of every single soul. And if you take away hope, you actually shut out the light. And if you shut out the light, there's nothing but darkness. So be careful that you provide hope to people. And don't define it for them. Allow them to define it for themselves. Be very careful with the lighthouse that's in our heart. The third thing is that there is a universe in every single one of us. We don't think about it, but there is. You are created powerful. You are created with a fingerprint that nobody else has but you. You are unique. You are powerful. You have a purpose. Find your passion and fulfill your purpose. And the last thing I want to say to you is that we all have mountains and valleys in our life. When you're at the top of the mountain, do not look up. It'll put you in a place of arrogance. Look in the valley. And in the valley is where we learn. In the valley, there is pain. In the valley, there are lessons. But be sure, when you're in the valley, you'll look up again at that mountain, and you will climb it. Thank you so very much.